Hey guys, this is Jeff Stanek here with Figure It Out Baseball. I've got another Figure It Out Baseball podcast today for you, and we're lucky enough to be joined by a returner to the program. We've got Justin Schulte here with us on the phone today. Justin is the head coach at Southeastern Community College. That is in Burlington, Iowa. It's a junior college in Burlington, Iowa. He's been on the program before, but he's an excellent coach. In addition to being an excellent coach, he's a guy that I used to coach under way back when in a different life. And he's someone that's had a ton of success through his college coaching career, and just someone I think there's a lot to talk about with him, a lot to learn from. So I'm really excited to get into some new things today with him and touch on some different subjects we didn't get into last time. I'll give you a quick bit of background on Coach Schulte, let you know who he is in case you didn't listen to the first podcast. Coach Schulte started his playing career actually at a Division III school called Simpson. He went from there to Southeastern Community College, and then transferred to the University of Iowa. So he's got a cool background story there. Started at D3, went to a JUCO, ended up at the University of Iowa. Currently, he's in his 25th season overall as a college coach. He is entering his 22nd season as a college head coach. This will be his 15th season as the head coach at Southeastern Community College, again in Burlington, Iowa. In 21 seasons as a college head coach, Coach Schulte's got 836 wins. That's an average of 39.81 wins per season. That number is creeping closer and closer to 40 wins a year on average every season. He started his head coaching career at Mount Mercy. That's an NAIA school in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. In 7 seasons there, he went 276 and 170. He is the all-time wins leader at Mount Mercy by a long shot. He's got 36 all-conference players in 7 years and 14 All-Americans in 7 seasons at Mount Mercy. At Southeastern Community College, he just completed his 6th straight season with 40 wins or more. That is a school record by a long shot. He's got 560 wins in 14 seasons. That comes out to an even 40 wins a year on average at Southeastern. In 14 years at Southeastern, he's got 114 all-region players, 11 All-Americans. More than 140 players have signed at a 4-year school or signed pro contracts. I'll go back a couple of years and just give you some highlights from some other years. I'm not going to go back through all 14 years. But in 2012 and 2013, those 2 seasons, Coach Schulte had 2 All-Americans. He had 2 conference defensive players of the year. He had a conference batting champion for the 4th time in his tenure during that span. Also the home run champion for the 4th time in the conference in those 2 years, as well as the player of the year. Coach Schulte had the player of the year at that point in the conference player of the year 4 of his first 8 years at Southeastern. In 2014, the team went to the World Series. They were ranked as high as 4th in the country. They finished that year with 45 wins, which is the school record. And I don't know what the number is offhand, but I know that of the top 10 winning seasons in school history, Coach Schulte might have all of them. If he doesn't, he's probably got 9 of them, but I'll probably ask him that. That'll be one of our first questions to get into. 2014, he had the conference defensive player of the year, also had the conference pitcher of the year. Going to 2015, he had the conference defensive player of the year again that year, had the reliever of the year. They were 3rd in the nation in hits in 2015 as a team. In 2016, he had the conference pitcher of the year for the 6th year out of 9 years. Had the conference pitcher of the year on his team. 2017, they had a first-team All-American. Also had the conference reliever of the year again that year. In 2018, they set the school record with 46 wins. The team also led the nation in defense. They had the conference defensive player of the year for the 7th time in 12 years, which is unbelievable when you, especially if you know anything about junior college baseball in Iowa. It's a state where kids really grow up wanting to play in junior college, and the junior college baseball out there is excellent. You're going to see multiple Iowa junior colleges in the top 25 every season, so it's not like they're in a cake conference. I mean, it's really pretty impressive what Coach Schulte's done. And then in 2019, the team won 41 games. Again, that was the 6th straight year with 40 or more wins. They went to a regional championship for the 7th time in 14 seasons. They had the national saves leader, who was also the conference reliever of the year. That's the 3rd year in a row they had the conference reliever of the year. And in 2019, they also were ranked as high as 4th in the country and spent basically the whole season in the top 25. Coach Schulte, in his 21 seasons as a college head coach, has never had a losing season. Coach Schulte, really appreciate you being here with us today. I'm excited to get into some questions with you.
Appreciate it, Jeff, and appreciate that introduction.
Yeah, it took so long, such a long introduction that your voice went out on you a little bit. There's a lot of stuff to get into. There's a lot that I think people need to know about you. And one of the things about Figured Out Baseball Podcast, excuse me, I got the same thing going on here. One of the good things about Figured Out Baseball Podcast that are different from a lot of other podcasts out there is that, we have a lot of coaches that a lot of people around the country won't have heard of because they don't coach on TV. A lot of our people, a lot of our guests on the show are, lower level Division I, Division II, Division III, junior college, NAIA coaches. And there's a lot of really, really good coaches out there in the country who don't coach at Power 5 schools. And it's important for me to let people know that are listening to this that how good these guys are that are on the program. And you're one of the best, one of the best anywhere. So it's an introduction I think is really necessary anytime that you're on here or anywhere else for that matter.
I appreciate it.
Well, I usually start with something on the resume that jumps out. There are so many things on yours that do jump out. And I kind of brought this up, but I'd like to ask you for clarification. Of the top 10 winning seasons in Southeastern history, how many of them do you have? You know that?
I imagine we have 9 of them. 40. We're the only ones that won 40 games here, and I think my last year as an assistant, we won 38 games here. So those are probably the top 10, I believe.
That's pretty impressive. For a program that's been around for a while and has had a decent amount of success before you got there. So you were an assistant at Southeastern for a time. You played there. You were an assistant there, and you've been the head coach now. This will be your 15th year there. What is it about Southeastern that keeps you around?
Well, my family, for one. I got a 16-year-old son that's about to graduate here in a couple of years, so that'll keep me here. We like the small community, and, Southeastern's been good to me. I graduated from here. I got my first job here. My little brother played here and then went to UAB down in Birmingham from Southeastern, and, it's just I love the junior college level. I love what it can do for kids after Southeastern, and what we try to do for them while they're here is get them better, and get them tougher, get them ready for life after Southeastern, which is getting into a 4-year college and being successful at that level, both academically and of course on the baseball field.
For people who aren't real familiar with junior college, and I know I've talked about this before with some other coaches on the program, but it's important for me, especially as someone that grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania. I had a very inaccurate idea of what junior college was about when I was in high school. Like I would have never considered going to a junior college because I thought that junior college was where kids went that just couldn't hack it academically at a 4-year school right out of high school. Would you just be able to clear that up a little bit and kind of give people an idea of what the academics are like and what the appeal is about going to a junior college for someone who might be looking to play in college baseball?
Well, on the academic end, I've never understood the stigma, I guess. Kids can get a 2-year degree that should transfer pretty easy, actually, as long as the grades are in order. You got no D's or anything on your transcript. You got 2.5 GPA. That's now what the Division I's are looking for. And at the end of your 4-year career and you got a bachelor's degree, that's what your resume says, where your bachelor's degree is from. I don't know how much people delve into people's transcripts, but yeah, I mean, on the academic end, it's usually, we've sent a bunch of guys on to the 4-year level, almost over 10 a year, it feels like, and they've all graduated from a 4-year college and got their bachelor's degrees, and it's been a pretty smooth transition, to be honest with you. On the baseball end, I think junior college is a place for guys who, maybe not getting the looks they want out of high school. They need a chance to develop. At the junior college level, at a place like ours, there's a chance to play almost 100 games a year. You get a chance to play, 20 dates in the fall, and obviously a 56-game schedule in the spring. And if you do it right in the fall, your kids are borderline sophomores by the time they're in the spring of their freshman year. So I believe in the competition end. People talk a lot about player development today, and one part of player development you never hear about is the competitive side of it. And I think that's a big part of player development, honestly. And we definitely try to sell that to recruits and get guys on the field as often as we can against somebody in a different uniform in the fall. So
I think I've asked you this last time that we talked, but it's such an interesting thing to me to talk about. The last time we were on the podcast together, I asked you how many of your kids that came in there got a better offer when they left than before they came, and your answer was just about all of them. I mean, pretty much everybody that sticks it out for 2 years gets a better offer, even if it's the same college is making offers. They're maybe offering a little more money or whatever it may be. Do you have any specific guys that kind of stick out to you? Any cool stories just to kind of relate to people, to give them some real examples of, this is a kid that came in with really hardly any interest. Nobody really knew about him, and he left here with this kind of opportunity. Anybody that really stands out to you from your long tenure at Southeastern?
Well, one of my favorite stories is actually you probably responsible for it more than anybody, was Dakota Backus. Dakota came into Southeastern. I won't get into Dakota's grades, but he wasn't a great student, and graduated from our place with over a 3.0 and got a really great opportunity at Indiana State. I believe he might have been the Missouri Valley Pitcher of the Year, but I mean he was Indiana State's Friday night guy and ended up a 9th round pick with the Oakland A's. He was later traded for Kurt Suzuki straight up, and he's still in the Nationals organization, and he's in AAA. He's a AAA All-Star this year. I think it's 6th or 7th year of pro ball, and we didn't have a lot of competition for Dakota as you remember, when we were recruiting him. One of my favorite stories was you going to see him, and he was really bad, and we talked to him after the game, and he was like, "Is Schulte going to still take me, or is he going to get rid of me after this?" But we saw some potential in him, and that's one of my favorite stories. I just think where his career started and is still going is a phenomenal story.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I remember seeing him, and I remember that he had a cousin that showed up when he came to campus, and I forget the cousin's name, but I believe he ended up being a Division I player as well. You probably remember his name. Maybe you went to Western Illinois. Do you know what I'm talking about? I'm blanking on his name.
Sam Walbert?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know if they're cousins or best friends, but yeah, they came in together.
Maybe it's been friends. Either way, that was a funny story. So at a junior college, you're allowed to bring kids on campus to work out for you. In fact, as a couple of my stops, it's not uncommon to bring a high school player in and let him actually practice with the team. I don't know if you guys do that or not now, Coach Schulte, but I know we did that at my second stop at the JUCO. It was just a thing that we did a lot to kind of see how a kid, fit in with guys, with college guys around him. But at this particular workout, Dakota Backus showed up, and he brought his friend with him, and he just said, "Hey, I think he had arm surgery or something happened." He said nobody's really on him, and we ended up signing him, and I believe he ended up going to. Did he go to Western Illinois?
Yeah,
am I correct on that? So he was a Division I player too. But yes, in Dakota Backus's case, if he hadn't come to Southeastern, he probably would have ended up at a D2 or D3, and who knows what would have happened. But it's a different story when you're Indiana State's Friday night guy. And I actually saw him. I don't know if I told you that, but I saw him when he came through and played in Altoona a couple seasons ago with Washington's organization, and I got to see him and talk to him a little bit. So that was fun. On the player development side, in your opinion, you just said the competition side of it, the competitive side of player development, in your opinion, is one of the biggest things about player development. What do you do, I guess, to really to kind of bring out the competitive side of guys? What do you do to create competitive environments and I guess enhance the competitive side of the players that you bring in? That's something I really think is a really unique thing about your program. what do you do with at practice or games or how are you cultivating that?
Well, we're playing a lot in the fall. One thing we do a little different. We play in the fall. We hire umpires at our home games. We turn the scoreboard on. And it's not, let's face it, it's not to have a good record in the fall. It's an opportunity to play the scoreboard. And, maybe we're in a good tight game and maybe I'll put a kid in a game that right now I don't know who he is as a player, but he gets in that 5-4 game as a reliever and I can learn about how he handles that. Or we pinch hit some guys later in that same game just to see how they handle those at-bats. And let's face it, it's not the same environment as a spring game, but the scoreboard is on. There's umpires. There's guys in the other dugout. And it's something that we can talk about after the game, situational stuff, game-winning stuff that, hopefully is a teaching point for us. As far as practice goes, we really turned our BP into competition every day, some sort of competition every day, whether it's situational BP and competition through that with all 18 or 20 hitters, trying to do the same thing from a competitive standpoint. Just a lot of different things where the scoreboard's on a lot of our practice, and it might say 180 to 160 some days. If somebody drives by, they're wondering if we have any pitching or not. But it actually is, we're keeping score for 10 innings on something different every inning, and trying to teach the game that way and understand. People use the term, you got to play every pitch, and I believe in that as well. But I think you got to try to explain to your team or make them understand the importance of situational baseball and playing every pitch, and that run in the third inning might be the difference in the baseball game come the ninth inning, and we got to take advantage of those situations.
What does playing every pitch mean?
Well, to me, it's just the focus on every pitch and understanding. You can't take pitches off, can't take plays off. I think one thing I've learned about junior college baseball and especially regional baseball, I feel like the game doesn't start till the seventh inning. So you see a lot of runs scored in the last 3 innings of games, and if you can take care of a lot of if you can take care of a lot of it in the first 6 innings, the last 3 innings become a little bit more in your favor, hopefully, and a little bit more downhill instead of being behind or giving away 3 or 4 runs early that you're chasing for 6 innings. So I think playing every pitch is, at the end of the game, it always comes down to 2 or 3 plays that decide the game, and you don't know what those plays are until the game is over. So, but it's easy to understand why you didn't win if you took those pitches off or if you didn't compete hard for 9 innings.
A couple of the things you just mentioned that I'd like to ask about, the competitive BP. Do you mind kind of expanding on these what you're doing in practice, where the scores is 100 and some to 100 and some on the scoreboard? Like, what are you guys? What are you keeping track of to make your batting practice competitive and to make guys compete in batting practice? You mind sharing that?
Sure. We'll put 2 teams in the field, or 1 team in the field, 1 team at bat, and we'll let all 9 guys hit. Or all 10 guys hit. Whatever we have, we divide them into 2. And round first inning might be a drag bunt inning where we're drag bunting between cones and into the danger zone, I guess we call it, where the pitcher or the third baseman has to make a play, and you have to put it between those cones to get a run or to get a point that's on the scoreboard. And one team may get 9 out of 9, the other team may get 6 out of 9, so it's 9-6 after the first inning. And then the second inning, maybe a hit and run, where we're trying to move a runner and stay out of the middle of the field, and that's going to be dictated point-wise based on how they execute that. That starts with a runner on first, and in the third inning maybe runner on second, nobody out, and can we move that runner from second to third base? And we just do situational every inning. Toward the end of the game, then we bring the infield in and the infield back, and just we're trying to drive runs in. And then there's 2 out hitting with a guy on third base, and you gotta barrel up a baseball with 2 outs, and those type of things are I think are important in situational baseball. I think that's how you win and lose baseball games.
So are you doing that?
Baseball gives you a heck of a chance to win baseball games if you're executing on a consistent basis.
Yeah, I think most teams that play you guys throughout the seasons would say that that's a staple of Southeastern baseball, is just being good at the little things and executing, and usually that's something you guys are pretty good at. Just as far as how this BP is actually happening, like, are you throwing a regular round of BP and the last pitch is the competitive pitch, or is each guy like seeing one live pitch and he's getting out of there like an at-bat? How exactly are you laying this out in practice?
When we play it this way, it's one pitch or one at-bat. It's one at-bat, so you don't have to. You're actually taking your at-bat off a BP pitcher. So if he's pounding you in and you got an approach middle of the way, then obviously you might take a few pitches. But yeah, it is an at-bat, and then so you virtually get 9 at-bats if we play 9 innings of situational baseball, and then there's also we do a lot of other things BP wise. Play a lot of live BP where every other ball is live, and you're putting your guys in position to make plays or get your cuts and relays in. Just stuff where guys are active and they're not just standing around. As much as you can, keep them moving around and keep them active.
For a lot of these competitive things you guys are doing, are you using pitching machines that are cranked up pretty good? Do you have an actual pitcher on the mound, just kind of throwing BP fastballs, or do you have an actual coach throwing BP? I'm curious as to how you're laying all this out.
Coach BP most of the time. There will be times where we're trying to get some guys some pitches, and we'll throw one of our guys out there for one half inning. Hopefully, he can get through that half inning in 15 to 20 pitches. But a lot of times it's just machine BP off the hack attack or pitching, or our BP coach throwing BP, Coach McVeigh.
How much do you believe in using the hack attack and cranking it up and hitting velocity at practice? How much is that a part of your everyday practices?
Oh, it's more. We do a lot more of that in the off season and in season in preparation for certain teams or certain pitchers. I know Coach McVeigh likes to use the hack attack for a lot of breaking ball work. I bet we probably use it over 50% for breaking ball stuff than we do for the fastball hitting. But yeah, we do use it quite a bit, and he's got a couple good drills I really like. They're almost borderline conditioning drills with the hack attack as well, hitting breaking balls and guys kind of getting in a 2-strike mode of trusting their hands and like I said, it's kind of a conditioning drill the way he does it, and where you're kind of rapid, and by the time you're into your 30th or 40th swing, it's you start to understand how well you can trust your hands and let the ball travel a little bit more. So, but yeah, we use it quite a bit more for the off-speed stuff than we do for fastball hitting, to be honest with you.
Another term you mentioned when we were talking about just what you're doing at practice is play the scoreboard, and I just, that was a term that you introduced to me that I took with me throughout the rest of my coaching career, and something if I get back into coaching at any point, it's something I'm certainly going to bring up again, and it's going to be a focal point with our guys. But can you kind of explain and define what that means for anybody that's listening to this that maybe is not familiar with that term? What does it mean to you to play the scoreboard?
Oh, I think playing the scoreboard, there's a lot. You're playing the scoreboard dictates how you're going to play a lot of times. If you're down 2 runs in the 9th inning and you're at first base, you're going to have to play it pretty close to the vest. I mean, we can't have pickoffs or the tying rounds at the plate, depending on who that guy is. That could be the guy we want up there. But I think the biggest thing is just paying attention to situations, understanding what you mean as a base runner, understanding what your at-bat means, understanding what the count is, anticipating certain things, 3-2, 1 out, and coach puts the steal on. What's that mean? That you virtually can play that as a hit and run. I mean, there's going to be contact or ball four, hopefully, if we got the right hitter at the plate. Those are things, we don't expect to get picked off all year on the bases if nothing is on. If we don't have anything on as a steal or anything, we don't expect to get picked off. We're gonna. I don't want to say we're gonna play conservatively, but we're gonna play smart and save and cherish our base runners and understand what they mean and so those things all go into playing that scoreboard. It's something that our guys need to understand. Are you going to force action down a run in the ninth if you hit a ball down the left field line and it's a 50-50 play? You probably not. If you're up 2 in the ninth and there's 2 outs, yeah, you might force that action. But if you're down 2 in the ninth and you get that single down the left field line, you probably can't take a chance of getting thrown out at second because the tying run's coming. You brought the tying run to play. You got your job done. So those are things that we talk about regularly because base running is a big part of baseball, and I think smart base running is a big part of it. One thing we're proud of is our stolen base percentage. We want to steal bases at an 85% or above clip, and we don't want to throw base runners away. And there's years we don't run very much, and there's years we ran a lot. But at both ends of it, we're usually a really high percentage base running team, and our guys, hopefully by the time we're in season, they have a really good understanding of what good base or smart base running is and aggressive at the right times.
For base stealing, that's always something that's really intriguing to me that I'm really interested in. How do you still coach third base, right? Or has that changed?
Yes, I do.
So you're a third base coach. You're calling the shots during the game. What do you see as a third base coach that tells you this is a good time for us to run? We should be able to steal this base. Like what's all going into that in your mind?
A lot of things. Pitch patterns are big. What the other team's been doing in situations, how they've been pitching off their fastball. Obviously, how quick a guy is to home plate. How athletic the pitcher is. We talk a lot about that. How quick his feet are. What you have to fear from that pitcher, and then obviously the catcher plays a big part in that too. But I think you steal more bases off the pitcher and timing off of him than you do the catcher a lot of times, and and how aggressive the other team is, with their holds, holding runners at first base or second base. I think that plays a lot into it too. We're a team that we'll look to steal third in the right situations. If the team does a good job of holding runners, and they're taking that away from us, then that's fine. There's probably a hole open somewhere else on the field. But anything that in baseball, it feels like anything that somebody's taking away from you, they're opening something else up. I feel like the slide step is something that we talk to our hitters a lot about. There's a lot of slide steps in baseball that, in my opinion, aren't done correctly, where guys lose velocity and they're up in the zone a lot. And we're not going to run on those guys, but hopefully we're going to hit doubles off of them. So, and that's something that it's a mindset that our hitters are supposed to, we want them to embrace. That, okay, we're going to be shut down here running wise, but we're going to drive that guy in from first base anyway. So, and hopefully you can develop that mentality with your guys and make them understand that as the game's going on. And there's, in college baseball, there's always guys you'd rather see out of the stretch than the windup. They lose a little bit, and they're not as competitive, and the big inning can happen then.
Another thing you mentioned that I'd really like to talk about is just the end of the game. There are a lot more runs scored at the end of the game. It seems like the last 3 innings than the first 6. And, going back to your bio, you guys have had the conference reliever of the year 3 straight years. I don't know how many times you've had it, in your years at Southeastern, but excuse me, I know in my couple years with you, the back end of our bullpen was really good both years, and that was something that I felt like was always a niche that you've had, is being able to comb through your roster and figure out who needs to be throwing the last 2 or 3 innings, and particularly with your closer. And your closers are not always your hardest throwers. Your closers are not always, I guess, the biggest guy with the biggest arm necessarily, but you've had a ton of success with the back end of your bullpen. How, as a coach, what are you looking at? What are the characteristics for you of a guy that's got a chance to be a back end of the bullpen type guy?
Great presence. And, we spend a lot of the time in the fall trying to figure out who that guy is if he's not returning. And I'll be honest, we spend a lot of time after this freshman year of determining whether to leave him there or make him a starter. Most of our guys that closed here, that they don't want to start. They cherish that role. Man, that's hard to lose that. If we're good enough, he's going to get a lot of opportunities. If it's a point where we're not good enough and we need to make him a starter so we can get to the end of the game, then that's an adjustment we'd have to make. But fortunately, we've been good enough to get our relievers a lot of opportunities. But the one thing about college baseball is no matter how good or how bad, I don't want to say bad, or how good you are, or maybe you're not as good as you want to be, you're always going to be in close games. And, one of the things about us over the last, 21 years, almost 25% of our wins are one-run wins. We've played 700 baseball and one-run games over the last 21 years, and we keep track of that, obviously, as you just found out. But, that's something that you have to win those games. We've never had a losing record in one-run games here at Southeastern, and if you were to reverse our record in one-run games, we would have never won 40 games. And to me, that's where I think we don't only pride ourselves in having a good closer. We actually try to find 3 relievers that we can turn the game over to, and we just had a really good luck of having really competitive kids that embrace that role. And it's not easy to tell a kid he's your 7th inning guy. He may never get a win all year or a save, but he may throw 24 times and not have much to show for it. But he's really one of your MVPs because he got the ball to the next guy. And I think it takes a special kid to embrace that. And some of my favorite guys, including my current setup guy, or my favorite guys that we've coached, and most competitive guys, they just want to be part of something, and they embrace that role. They're just fine to do their job and get the ball to the next guy.
How do you kind of weed out a guy that's got legitimate confidence, legitimate presence, as opposed to somebody who's kind of faking it, I guess? I think for anybody that's coached, you see a guy that's got kind of fake confidence about him, and he kind of acts like he's, he's got it together and acts like he's tough, kind of a gritty guy, but really deep down he's pitching scared out there. How do you figure that out through the fall? Is that something that you figure out in the fall games, or is there other things that you do throughout the year where you can kind of get, see who the real person is underneath the kind of the facade? How do you figure that out?
Well, some of that I probably can't say on a podcast, but we try to test them a little bit, see what they're made of. One thing we do a lot of here is team defense, and that sounds crazy, but I believe one of the best ways to speed up practice and speed up a kid's mind is through team defense in first and third situations, and bunt coverage stuff with the runner on second, and seeing kids how they respond, especially early when they get here in the fall and the game's a little faster and you got base runners out there. You kind of see the presence of a kid, and and all of a sudden you put him in a game and you kind of see the presence of a kid there when he's making pitches, and I think it's a learning process. Sometimes you don't find that guy until in the spring, and you've played 10 or 12 games, and you had a kid that's down on your depth chart a little bit, and all of a sudden you put him in some tough situations and he gets out of a few. You put him in some non-leverage situations and he's fine, and all of a sudden you're like, well, let's try him in this situation, and he contains himself pretty well, and all of a sudden 4 weeks later he's pitching the 6th or the 8th inning for you every time and getting a goose egg, and it's an evolving thing. I don't think there's no science behind it, obviously, but the ability to make pitches is something that those guys have to do. Some of them come in specifically to get us out of an inning, and I'm hoping they make those 3 pitches I saw in the bullpen, on their bullpen the other day, and we're going to try to execute what they did in the bullpen the other day, and if they do, they're going to get us out of that inning, and then give them a clean inning, hopefully. But I think it's something that for some reason we've had a good luck with it, and found the right guys, and I'll be honest, a lot of times it's guys that just don't have quite starter stuff. They have a good fastball that they can locate, and they have one out pitch, and to me that's enough for an inning. The guy with the plus changeup and the good breaking ball and the good fastball that can spot it, that guy's probably more destined to be a reliever or a starter for us. So, the one thing we try to do from day one is put together a good 10 or 12-man staff, and the priority, honestly, is finding the guys at the back end.
Interesting. It's backwards to how a lot of teams probably set up their roster, but again, something that's obviously worked for you guys. You also have a really interesting way to develop kids in the off season and to kind of figure out who's who in the off season when you're not on the field. Can you talk about any of that, and what that means for your program, and how you start to separate, I guess, the competitors from the excuse makers in the off season?
Yeah, well, we do things a little differently. We kind of break our season into 4 phases, so to speak. The competition phase, we're playing a lot in the fall. Obviously, we're practicing a lot. We're lifting during the fall season 3 days a week, and we're playing 2 or 3 days a week if we can. And there's showcases involved in that. That there's a lot of those now in the fall and junior college, and but that's the priority there for me, honestly, is finding the competitive sides of kids, finding your best players, and but then at the 8-week point, I shut it down. I know it might be 60 degrees out in October in Iowa, and it's still good playing weather, but I'm big into that second phase of off season where we get in the weight room full time. We're in there 5 days a week. We lift 4. We do circuit training 1. And a big thing of our program is our conditioning. We condition at 6 in the morning, and I don't know one kid in America that wants to get up and condition at 6 in the morning, but I think that's the best time to test their motor a little bit and find out find out a little bit more about them and see who embraces that time of year. And one thing I've always determined in December is if our team's going to be tough enough to compete with our schedule that we like to play. So, and our 6 a.m. isn't, it isn't not 2 hours of running. It's sometimes with the dynamic warm up and some of the other things we do, it's actually 30 minutes of conditioning, but it's intense conditioning, and a lot of time conditioning. You're running for times and competing against the clock and trying to see what kind of shape you can get in. There's guys that don't make those times early on, but by the time December rolls around, our team's I always say they're like machines, and they're very competitive against what we're trying to do. And you see it in practice and some of the competition we do in the morning with some relay races and things like that. It gets pretty intense. So, our guys understand it and they embrace it. And it's not for everybody. I think we lose recruits because of our work ethic, to be honest with you. But I'm just trying to get kids when they leave here that nothing they do at the next level is going to be overwhelming for them, and we set them up for success, hopefully.
I think it's just interesting what you do with your guys, and that's kind of why I wanted to ask you about it, because I think that I think it's sort of popular now for people to think that the conditioning part of baseball is overrated because you don't need to be in that great a shape. I mean, people need to be, obviously the weight room is a big thing, but as far as just conditioning guys and running guys, it's kind of a popular thing now just to say that it's not really that necessary, but it's really necessary for your program and to find winners and to, like you said, you figure out in December. Go ahead.
To interrupt you there, the funny thing, Jeff, is, I don't know how many kids in the last, 5-6 years have called me and said, man, Coach, I just never feel as fresh during our season as I did at Southeastern. And we take 5 southern trips. We're on the bus a lot, and that's hard on your body. The playing's hard enough on your body, but getting on and off that bus and driving 10 hours, and I think your body's got to be in shape for that. And some guys, I had a kid call me last year and said he felt drained in mid-April, and because I just don't ever recall not being fresh when I played at Southeastern. You always kept us fresh. You know how to get us in shape and then keep us fresh during the season. And I think it's important. I personally do. But it's not for everybody. Like I said, some people may disagree. We tend to play good baseball in April and May, and we'll continue to try to develop guys the same way on that end of it.
So developing guys and just being fresh for the spring, what goes into that? Is it you feel like the conditioning in the off season is what sets them up for that, or do you is it the way that you structure practice in the spring around your games, or what exactly are you doing that's a little bit different than some other programs just to keep guys fresh and healthy and at their best at peaking in April and May?
Well, I think we're not probably doing much different than other people, but I think our conditioning and from October to December is a big help for them. We give them a program over Christmas break that we just left them with, and I don't expect them to do everything we send them, but if they do, 2/3 of it or 75% of it, they're going to be in really good shape when they get back, and we'll test them a little bit when they get back to see who did what, and then it's a couple days, maybe 1 day a week of conditioning to keep them sharp, but just a lot of base running drills, and now that we got our bubble, we can do a lot more live stuff, and then once you get back on these trips, we'll get back on Sunday night, and our guys will have Monday off, and we'll get after it for just a couple days of practice, and one pretty heavy day probably, and one fairly light day, and back at it the next weekend on the bus. Then be done with our southern travel, and it's conference time, and you kind of got to monitor the pace, and I think you pay attention to your players a lot more that time of year, their body language and what they're telling you, their energy level, and trying to keep their energy level fresh for the weekends especially, and maybe a guy needs Tuesday off in a non-conference game, and that's okay, but maybe you can get a pinch hit later, but you just got to kind of keep an eye on that, and I think your players do the best job of telling you without telling you anything, if you're paying attention to their body language and their energy level and things like that. So that's important. Sometimes just going to the ballpark, taking around a BP and watching 8 innings and waiting for your pinch hits, it's a good mental break for you, and then getting back in there on the weekend. But the players they probably do the best job of telling you without saying a word if they need a day or not. So
that's awesome. So you've talked a lot about player development and just about things that you're doing to get your players ready for the season, to prepare to win. I haven't heard you say anything about, using any kind of tech, which I know you guys do, but to you, how much has, well, let me just preface by saying I think on on social media over the last handful of years, you get the impression that if you don't have all of the latest technology and you're not using it, then you're not coaching right, and that you're not doing the best possible thing for your players. And I know you guys use it again, but I also know there's a lot of things that you've done that are the same as you've done for a long time, or at least close. Obviously, you probably tweak it a little bit. But to you, how much has coaching changed since you've started? I mean, how much has the game changed? How much is it about, what you have to do with players or what you need to do to prepare them? How much has that changed over the years, especially with the introduction for Rapsodo and things like that, again, you guys use in your program? But how much has coaching and preparing players to have success really, really changed with the introduction with all this technology?
Well, my honest opinion, this might not be a popular one, but I think coaching's changed a lot because I think there's a lot of coaches out there that think it's about them, and you see that on social media. And as long as this game's going to be played, and as long as the game was played before 2019, the game's about the players. We do a lot of the tech stuff, but if we have to advertise it to make sure people know we're doing it, then maybe we're not doing it for the right reasons. But I think that's how the good game's changed. I think what social media has done is it's give everybody a voice, and they think they're the most important voice, and that's unfortunate. When it's our job, number one job is just for the kids. It's for developing these kids mentally, physically, socially, for their next step. We're junior college baseball. We're a stepping stone. We're not, I don't want a kid to look back and I just want to look back and say Southeastern was a good choice because it allowed them to go to the next level, and it was the right choice to get to that level. I don't need them to say it was a highlight of their life. If it is, great, but I feel bad because they didn't enjoy something after us. But so that's my biggest thing with coaching. I mean, I think it does. If you're not, it's big in recruiting now. I think you're starting to see it at lower levels, and I'm sorry, we do a lot of tech stuff and a lot of the analytic stuff, but at the base of who we are, it's not at the base of who we are. It's part of who we are. And I think whether you're doing it right or doing it wrong, I don't think anybody knows that until May. You can evaluate all you want, but I'm sorry, if you're a 20 and 30 program, how many wins for that tech stuff worth, or how much better does your players get? And I still think winning matters, and I think that's how you evaluate everything at the end. If you were doing things right and had a winning environment and a winning culture, I think that's what kids want to be a part of. If they don't want to be a part of that, they're definitely not the right kid for us. But I think putting a kid through a full season of 6 months and getting them to the finish line and telling them hard work is important and success is important off the field, to do things right and to not be successful when it's all said and done, I think that's a hard pill for that kid to swallow personally. But that's just me.
Personally, I couldn't agree more with just the results on the field, or that's what's telling you whether or not what you're doing is working. And it makes me really take a second hard look, when programs are out there promoting what they're doing, but they don't win games. How, like you said, how much is what you're doing working if you're not able to win? Like player development, you're developing players so that individual can help the team become a better unit and win more games. And I guess I just, and it's probably part of what you drilled in me from my time with you, but if you're not winning ball games, what you're doing is not working. And to me, like, if you don't meet or exceed your expectations for the season at the end of the year, you really need to go back and evaluate what you're doing, no matter what you're doing, and no matter how much it may be the popular thing to do. So I find that part intriguing, and especially the player development side of things that you guys get into. I guess if I were to describe you, I would describe you as an old school coach who likes learning new school things, but you still have all these old school things about you. And I think, unfortunately, because of social media, when you say things like he's an old school coach, I think that has a negative connotation nowadays. But to me, an old school coach is just somebody that really knows the game and believes what he believes and has some conviction in what he believes in, and what he's doing is working. And to me, again, having a program that wins 40 games 6 years in a row, I don't know how anybody could ever look at what you guys are doing, regardless of what you're doing, even if you had no tech whatsoever in your practices or within your team. I don't know how anybody could look at you and say, well, they need to change. I mean, if players are getting better and players are going on to the next level and you're winning, what needs to change? So,
well, at the end of the day, you still have to play good defense, and you still have to have timely hitting, and you still have to throw strikes, and that's what wins and loses baseball games. And the last 2 years, we've thrown a lot of strikes, and we're the only team in our league that's walked less than 200 hitters, and we've played over 40 innings more than everybody else, and we've also somehow miraculously been in the top 5 in the country in strikeouts. So maybe just throwing strikes leads to strikeouts. I don't know. Maybe something like that works. Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. But that's how the numbers pan out.
I'm curious to ask you one more thing. I'll ask you just a couple more questions here, and then I'll let you go for the day. But we talked before we started recording this briefly just about hiring assistants, which I think also goes a long way just to continued success. You had a lot of success hiring a lot of really good coaches. In fact, this is one of the things we talked about before we started the podcast is just about several of your former coaches and a former player who are now coaching in pro ball, and guys who have had a lot of success. And another one of your former coaches is a Division II head coach, and there are probably guys I don't know about. There's another guy that's a Division I assistant coach, and you've got a pretty good coaching tree underneath you. What's the secret to hiring a good assistant coach? In 2019, going to the 2020 season, if you were interviewing a guy right now, what would be some characteristics that you'd be looking for in an assistant coach?
On the competitive level of that person, and a teacher. I mean, I think you can have a lot of baseball knowledge if you can't share that knowledge and relay it to somebody. Then are you a really good coach? The term "telling isn't teaching" is a great term. It's not teaching just because you know something. It's not teaching. And one of the first things I look for is guys that can teach. I think that's important. The guys that you're speaking of, Travis Hergert, phenomenal coach, and Tony Kagul, phenomenal coach. Those guys could really teach, and they were passionate about it. And that's the other thing. I want guys that are passionate about who we are and what we are as a program. And then that's, I've often not hired the best resume since I've been here. And that's okay with me. I'm trying to find the right guy that fits what we try to do here. And obviously it's led to some success, and having you and Tony on the same staff was really good staff. Having P.J. McEntee and Brett Veliquette together, and Mark Michael, and some of the guys that we've had, they were phenomenal coaches. And the current guys I have are great coaches. And, I think I'm looking for something a little different, I guess. I'm looking for the right guy. I'm looking for a competitive guy who has a passion for teaching. And if we don't look like what we want to look like as a baseball team, we're not coaching well enough, I guess is the best way to describe it. And that's one of the best compliments I've ever gotten from people is, man, your teams always look the same. The names are different, but your teams always look and play the same. And so if we look like a poorly coached team, then quite frankly, we are. And, that's something that we have to embrace as a coaching staff. So.
Now, are you finding that out? Are you figuring out, who you want to hire just by your conversation, or are you digging pretty deeply with references, just to find out a little more about people and about the competitive side? How do you just figure that out exactly?
I honestly get more out of my conversations, but I do call a lot of references and try to learn about that person through somebody else. But I get most of mine through my own conversation.
We talked
with the research I've done, I guess.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about before we started recording this. One other thing we talked about was just about your due diligence to call everybody that applies for jobs, and I think that's something that's you said you don't always hire the best resume, and just getting on the phone with people and having a conversation with them, regardless of what their resume looks like, is a big deal, and something that that you really impressed that upon me whenever I first heard that from you, and it's something I'll carry with me, and I think that anybody that's listening to this that's got to hire people for whatever job you're in, I think it's a good way to go about things, and I'm sure that, had you not done that, you probably would have missed out on some people because their resumes weren't, the most impressive, but they ended up being a really good coach for you.
Right. I think it's important. I mean, you don't know. I was a young coach that just knew the head coach, and that's how I got my opportunity. And I still believe I got the Mount Mercy job at 26 because I was probably the only applicant. But I just think everybody got a shot somehow, and I respect anybody that's trying to get to the next level or trying to get to the college level if they're just getting a start or trying to transition to another new job. I just think that's important.
Is there anything on a resume that will stick out to you, or something that you really, like when you see it, you're like, okay, this could be the guy? Is there anything on a resume that really sticks out to you when you're looking through some things?
I like resumes that talk about their success, I guess. I think that's important. I like reading cover letters and kind of seeing if it's a generic cover letter or something a little different, something he touches on that may stick out to me, like, that's a different way of looking at things. But yeah, there's different things you look at. I mean, success is important. If a guy's been in a winning culture, he understands what high expectations are, hopefully, and that's what we want. That's what we want here.
Such a good perspective, and I think a lot to learn. I think anybody that coaches or anybody that does anything competitively, there's a lot of jobs out there that aren't in coaching that are competitive, and I just think there's a lot to learn. I just personally like listening to successful people and how you go about doing things, and like learning from anybody that I can. And Coach Schulte, you and I go back a long way, but I feel like I learn something from you every time we talk. This has been another great podcast. I appreciate the time that you've spent today. It means a lot for me to, for you to take an hour and a half out of your day to come on here and kind of share a lot of the things that you do with your program, and the willingness to share what you do with other people. I think means a great deal. And I just personally want to thank you for being here.
No problem, Jeff. I appreciate the opportunity.